Good morning, Anne Marie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you? We just got off of our Clubhouse. Now we're on our gosh dang YouTubes. We're on all
We're
this.
here, we're there, we're
Just
everywhere.
flitting around social media, y'all.
If you're watching this, by the way, hello, Holly and Maya, Anne Marie Hoftailing from Story and Printing. We are a company that teaches great people and great humans the art and science of storytelling, but we also have a ton of other professional development content, and we are now on Clubhouse. We have joined 2021, and we have a group there called Executive Presence Revamp, which is really kind of where we're putting a lot of professional development content that relates in some way to executive presence, but might not be, like precisely straight on, but just to try to get some ears and eyes on it. And today we talked about working for a monster, which we've already done a YouTube video about. Anne Marie had this great story, or this great article rather, on LinkedIn about strategies, that you can employ if you are working for a monster, someone who really is destructive and abusive at work. And we got to talking, and I want to ask you some questions, Anne Marie, about sort of a follow-up to that. So when I too have worked for a monster. We all have, and I think, and if you haven't, you're very lucky. Congratulations, gold star for you. And without getting too specific, I made the decision to leave because ultimately I drank a little bit of poison every day for an extended period and contorted myself and made myself sick over it, and realized, like, man, this is not how I want to live my life. And I did all the things that you talk about in your article, which I will post the link to with this video so folks can refer to it. I had conversations with him. I had conversations with people to whom he reported on a variety of levels, and nothing happened. I mean, and he continued to sort of be propped up. And so I thought, okay, I'm leaving. And I did. And that's hard to do. It was hard to do. I did not really have a plan necessarily, but never regret the decision. But I remember there was another woman who worked with me and sort of for me, had kind of a dual line reporting structure. And she had been at this company for a long time. And the toxicity was beginning to make her a bit toxic, I would say. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to her, you have to leave now. Like, this is what I'm seeing. You are being abused by this person every day, and you're coming to my office crying. I mean, almost every day. Or you want to take an hour coffee walk to talk about how terrible it is. And enough, right? And I said, I would really encourage you to leave. And that was really hard for me to do, right? I'm not somebody that loves, frankly, I mean, in a coaching environment, yes, like no problem. But with interpersonal friendships like that, especially with that weird sort of power imbalance, I thought, I'm leaving. Who am I to tell her that she needs to leave too? But I thought I have to tell her that. And so as tough as it was, I did. And I think, I would love your thoughts on if we are witnessing something like that happening within our environment, or work environment, whether it's an environment of 5 people or 5,000 people, what sort of duty, impetus do we have to support that person and say, listen, I see what's happening to you, and these are the choices you have?
I mean, I think you have to really think about what your value system is. Mm-hmm. I was in a work environment where I was not particularly being abused, but one of our teammates was being horribly abused, mm-hmm. and in meetings in front of everyone. And we as a team went to HR and we just said, hey, this boss, who, by the way, as a person we all happen to like,
right.
Is
a good point to go back to, by the way.
Yeah, is behaving in a way that is monstrous, and it cannot go on. And she needs to be stopped because no one should be treated that way. And we did this collectively as a group. And I think if you don't have the support of other people, it is hard to do. Yeah. And I think you need to understand that your silence is a contribution to allowing this to be sustained. And I said this in the piece that I wrote, and I've said this again and again, If there's somebody who is wielding power in a destructive and harmful way, and that person has been in their position for an extended period of time,
Yeah.
they are being nurtured and protected by the system. There's
Right.
no question of that. Nobody operates that way in isolation. And so if we're not all making sure that we contribute to a healthy work environment, and we sort of don't sort of stand up for people's, frankly, human rights to be treated
Right.
with decency. I mean,
Right.
it is, to me, it is that. If we don't stand up for that, we are in some way contributing to a toxic work environment ourselves. And it's really incumbent upon us, even when we are not the ones being abused, to be able to say, hey, this is not an environment I want to be in if
Right.
this is allowed to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I mean, it's a scary thing, right? I mean, I think
Totally.
depending on where you are in your career, especially, right? If you're new to a company, if you are a little bit more junior, if you're in a new industry, in which the environment might be different. I mean, I think that we hear that a lot from folks, right? That, well, I mean, I've observed this, but it's, I've only been here for 2 months. I mean, listen, I will just tell you, with this particular work environment that I experienced, I knew literally from the first day.
Yep.
Like I walked in
Me
and I was
too.
like, holy shit,
Yep.
what have I gotten
That's
myself
right.
into? Like, could
Yeah.
I maybe get my old job back? Is it too late? Like,
Rarely takes very long. I mean,
mhm,
rarely. And I think that that's some of we talked about this today on Clubhouse. You get gaslit yourself. You
right?
start believing like, oh, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this isn't that bad because everybody else is just enduring it.
Everybody else seems okay.
Yeah, it's like maybe maybe I'm overreacting, but I think you have to trust yourself. And I think, let's be honest, I think it's harder for any marginalized group to
Yeah,
complain, any marginalized group. I think,
absolutely.
yes, it's harder if you're junior. Yes, it's harder. But I think for everyone, when you witness this kind of behavior, you have a choice and a decision. I remember doing a training for a tech company and a woman talking about, she had a partner, and they were working with governmental agencies, and this one particular guy that they were working with, he was not including her on meetings, even though
Mhm.
she's the lead. He wouldn't respond to her. He was only talking to her male partner. And without her even asking, the male partner sent this guy an email, CC'd her, and said, this can't continue. I am not the lead on this. You need to direct this to her. She is the lead, and this has to stop right now. This is
Yeah.
unacceptable. And that's a really powerful thing to do. It also happens to be the right thing to do.
Right.
And I think that, I used to tell my children all the time, if your moral compass is spinning, choose the hardest thing. It's probably also the right thing.
That's such a good piece of advice.
Thanks.
Well, writes it down to tell her own children.
Thanks, Biscuit. Because I think that we struggle, but the truth of the matter is, if it's hard, it's also probably the right thing.
Right.
That's what makes it so hard. It's not easy to do the right thing.
Right.
It's hard. Yes, there may be a personal cost. I mean, we pride ourselves in the fact that we are not a company that is dishonest about things. We are wildly transparent about the fact that, yes, there is going to be a personal cost. Yes, this is hard. We don't do trainings that are based on like Candyland and lollipops and unicorns.
Right.
And if we don't collectively do this work, we will forever be trapped where traumatized people traumatize people in
Right.
perpetuity.
And I would also just say, just my closing thought on this is more of a real like procedural thought. But, I think sometimes, especially within like certain types of corporate cultures that are very entrenched, large, siloed, the thought is, I'm going to go to HR with this issue.
Mhm.
And that's it, right? That might not always be the best way. And I'll just say that as someone who is a lawyer, has been a GC of a company. I think sometimes again, this is very dependent on the specific company.
Yes.
But sometimes HR is literally just looking at, is this an illegally actionable complaint that we have? Like, I mean, of course, they're going to measure their risk, right? Like and I think the response, if you do go to HR, tells you a lot of data points about sort of the culture within which you are working. Would you agree with that? I mean, I think that like,
depending on the size of the company, HR might be the CEO's best friend.
right,
This happens and we act like it doesn't,
right,
but it does. And I think that to pretend that HR is this pure sort of ivory tower of ethics is just intellectually dishonest. I think it greatly depends on the environment you're in, and you do have to be thoughtful and strategic about whether or not that is the wisest path.
right. Like, so who are you talking to about this, about the behaviors you're observing, and this requires thought, right? And strategic thought, like you said. I mean, so, with my particular situation, the conversations I had were with strategic partners of this person that worked with this person in a variety of different ways, in ways that also touched my work, if that makes sense, right? I'm trying to, I don't want to be too specific for
Yes,
obvious reasons, but and the conversations were always, this is what I am observing, right? This is the behavior. It's all about facts. These are the things that are happening. This is how that's impacting me and my ability to really perform. And this is what I think needs to happen to sort of extricate me from that situation. And that was really, I mean, I wish I could say in retrospect that it was literally as eloquent as that. It wasn't. But, for me, it wasn't, I did not go to HR and just lodge a complaint, right? Because again, like, I think this goes back to a little bit of some of the stuff we talked about in our last video too, right? Sometimes monsters are not harming you in a way that's like legally actionable. And that's not what you're asking for, right? Like, you're not asking for a payout, you're not, whatever. You are calling out a specific behavior, right? Or a specific pattern of behaviors that are wildly detrimental to your productivity and your well-being at work. So I just want to make that point too. If you find yourself in this situation, really think about like, what are the strategic conversations, right? That I can have, and with whom, because I think that matters just as much as the content of the conversation.
And the last thing I'll just say before we wrap it up is, if you have worked for a monster in your past and you still feel a lot of shame around that, a wound around that, use that. And I say that from a perspective of write through that story, write it all out. There's some real value in sort of narrative therapeutic kind of contexts. And I think allow it to be a learning tool for you of how not to be a leader.
Yeah.
And to think about what that taught you about how not to be in the world, and use it from that perspective, because it's not your shame to carry, it's theirs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, as always. If you are watching this and you like it, give us a like, give us a comment. We love it. If you feel, like you want to keep your experience with your own Monsters Anonymous, we totally get it. You can send us a DM on Instagram, send us a message on LinkedIn. Just let us know. We develop these videos in direct relation to, our experiences working with clients and with folks who engage with us on social media. So if there's something that you'd like to hear about, let us know, hit us up, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Right? See you later.
Bye-bye.